winter is coming. It's getting a little chilly. I'm going to put the flannel on and I'm going to tell you all about internet. Today's episode is coming to you from the Murrumbidgee region of New South Wales. You're going to have to excuse the cockatoos. They're a bit excited about internet as well. So, there goes the sunnies in the dirt. Cockatoos are obviously quite excited as well. There's been a lot of rain around and I think they're a bit excited. Anyway, internet, off-grid. Let's talk about it.
Coming to you today from our local stomping ground. This is Middle Beach.
This is where
Leeton, and this is where we had all those underage parties when we were much younger. This is where you'd pull up your swags, have a campfire, and drink alcohol while your parents didn't know about it.
Yep. I used to ride motorbikes out here through these river flats, and we used to water ski on the river, and the old stomping ground, very much so.
Yeah, as we were coming in, it's a bit of a boggy track. As we were coming in, I have fond memories of getting the old Hilux stuck out here.
Yeah.
I had to call Dad to get us out with his car, and then we had to transfer all the bottles of alcohol from one car to the other.
Oh, dear.
All right, let's get into it. Internet. So, where do you want to begin?
So in this episode, we're going to cover off how we get internet off-grid. Now, internet, when we're travelling off-grid, to some people might seem like a contradiction of terms in the sense that a lot of us go off-grid to get away from it all, to get to relax and chill out and spend time out in the bush like we are now. The fact is, for a lot of us these days, it's a necessary evil, particularly if you're travelling long-term or full-time and you've got family commitments, business and work commitments and things like that. And
some of us have Netflix addictions.
Some of us
are addicted to the F1.
Well,
you can't miss a live stream.
Addicted's a strong word. Anyway,
when was the last time you missed a live stream?
Yeah, you don't miss it. I don't get to see them all live. They're normally in the middle of the night, but I definitely get to catch up on a Monday morning. That's for sure. Over the last 2 years, we've tried out a couple of different setups. Yeah. And we're going to run through all those with you today. The pros and cons of each of those, why we've changed, why we've tried different ones, and then a few of our tips, different apps and things that we use, how we manage our need for internet as we travel, and all of that. So that's all come up in this one. So quick congratulations to Karen, or Karamar1 as you are called on Google. Congratulations, you are the winner of our $100 gift voucher from Everything Caravanning and Camping from our video on planning your off-grid travels a couple of weeks ago.
So to enter, again, this week we are giving away another $100 voucher from our mates at Everything Caravan and Camping. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, jump on the link down the bottom of this episode. There's a link to the Everything Caravan and Camping newsletter, and leave us a comment. Any comment.
Job done.
Job done. You're in the draw.
Congratulations,
so Karen.
again, Karen. If you can send us an email, simon@thelifestylepioneers.com, and we'll also respond to your comment that you left on our video and let you know that you're the winner. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And before we go any further too, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone for supporting our channel by watching the ads. As you all know, or maybe some of you don't know, 10% of all the revenue from this channel goes to rural and children's charities. And so far, we've been able to raise over $12,500.
Unreal.
Which is unreal. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch the ads. Really, really appreciate it. You guys are the best.
And thanks for all your feedback on that off-grid travel planning video. It sounds like we've got a hurt boy coming through.
I'll be back.
By the sounds of it, you guys would love for us to do a walkthrough of Wikicamps and how to get the most out of the Wikicamps app. We listened and we are planning that video as we speak, so that will be coming out in the next few weeks as well. So stick around, keep your eye out for that one if that interests you, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it.
All right, so let's dive in. Firstly, what do we personally need internet for? What are our internet needs? And we really want to just go through this with you so you can evaluate whether your needs are similar to ours, higher than ours, or less than ours, to help you make those decisions.
And it's going to help you decide, let's go for a little wander. It's going to help you decide as well, once you determine what your needs are, that's going to determine what setup's right for you, as well as and a big part of what setup's right for you is going to come down to cost. What we're willing to spend on internet, or what someone who works on the road is willing to spend on internet, is going to be different to someone who just wants a bit of internet to catch up on social media, watch their favourite YouTubers, and do some emails and keep in contact with the world. So your needs are really, like a lot of the stuff we've done in this off-grid series, your needs and the way you travel is going to determine what setup's right for you. But the information in this video is going to help you to make that decision and find out some of the pros and cons, some things you might not be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do we need internet for?
So we've got homeschooling for the kids. So that we do distance education through School of the Air. So Harrison needs to have a Zoom call with his teacher at least 4 times a week. So 4 days of the week we need to have good access, enough to do a Zoom call. We do social media most days, I would say. Instagram, Facebook, we get on there most days, engage with you guys. We love it. We love sharing what we're up to, getting back to you guys. That's all part of our business. Obviously, we've got a YouTube channel that we need to upload videos to, which is a really, really... we need to be somewhere with really good internet at least once a week to upload our videos, because they are massive and they use a lot of data.
Yeah, they take a long time to upload if your speeds aren't very good.
Yeah. And then obviously Simon is addicted to the F1 and we need to watch that. And I don't mind dabbling in a bit of Netflix every now and then.
Liz loves a good binge.
I do love a good binge. And then just your general emails and things like that.
So and keeping in touch with family and friends.
Keeping in touch with family, friends.
All that sort of stuff. But the regular ones and the big ones are definitely school, our business and our work with running this channel and everything to do with that, and in particular those uploads weekly. We've been traveling for 2 years now. When we first started out, our setup consisted of these phones and mobile hotspotting off our phones to our laptops or anything like that. I hope you can hear us over these cockatoos. They're bloody excited to see us and we can't blame them, but yeah, so phones. Now there's some big pros to phones, and for a lot of people, and for us included, for the first 6 months of our trip, and this was before we started releasing videos on YouTube, first 6 months these did the trick. Wi-Fi hotspotting off your phones is a really effective way to get internet to your laptop or your other devices that you might be wanting to use. So we did crank up our data plan a little bit on our phones when we first left, just to have a little bit more data available, and that was a really cost-effective solution. It's pretty effective. It's a very reliable way to get internet. It's reasonably good as far as access to the internet goes, as far as speeds and things like that, depending on where you are, obviously, and we'll talk more about that in a later part of the video. And they're 12 volt only, easy to charge, light, there's all these big pros to them, but there are some cons. One of the big cons is you have to be near service. You have to be near a Telstra tower, or in our case, a Telstra tower. Now, we use Telstra. We find Telstra by far the best network around Australia, particularly in the more remote areas. There are some obscure spots like outback South Australia, for example, where Optus is everywhere. But there's not enough of those places to really make us consider using a different carrier. We actually use Boost, which is a secondary carrier to Telstra, the prepaid only, which suits us. It works really well, and it uses the full Telstra network. It's the only third-party network that uses the full Telstra network of towers and poles, except for their 5G, that you'll only get maximum of 4G on there.
Yeah. So just going back to the South Australia stuff, when we were in South Australia using our phones, we just bought a prepaid Optus SIM card and used that.
Some people do. We have heard of other travellers running too. So like Liz, for example, might be on Optus and I'm on Telstra. But like I said, there's just not enough places where we travel, in our experience, where that would be worth it. Normally, Telstra just crushes it as far as service and where you're going to get service. The other con to phones is it's not a permanent Wi-Fi network, so you've got to turn it on when you need it, turn it off when you finish using it. I mean, you could leave it to run most of the time. It does chew your battery a little bit, but that's not the end of the world. But that's really the only other big con. By far the biggest reason that we upgraded from that was the amount of data we were using, but the main one by far was we needed to increase the areas and the amount of areas that we were able to get access to the internet and increase the strength of that signal and the reliability.
Just an example, when we were starting off our YouTube channel, we were sort of in Central Australia, and we knew we needed to get a YouTube episode up that week. We would be planning our trip based on around where we could get internet, and that just became ridiculous. Like the fact that we would drive 6 hours to be somewhere so we could have service to upload a video was dictating too much of our plans, so we needed to upgrade.
And the next setup we went with, which we'll touch on in a minute, didn't solve that 100%, but it did improve it. Now, if we didn't have to run a YouTube channel, which was the other big reason we upgraded, is because we started the YouTube channel and we realised that hotspotting off our phones just wasn't going to cut it. If you were just needed internet for a little bit of Netflix streaming, a little bit of emailing and keeping up to date on social media, watching your favourite YouTubers, all of that sort of stuff, you probably wouldn't need to go looking any further than Wi-Fi hotspotting off your phone. It's extremely effective and, like I said, very cost effective as well. But if you are going to be homeschooling and working off grid,
working remotely,
then you're probably going to find that it may not be adequate for your needs. But then again, that's going to depend where you're traveling as well. Like everything we've covered in this off-grid series, really depends where you're traveling. If you're fairly well East Coast sort of bound and hanging around the East Coast, you're probably going to find you don't need it as much as obviously if you're traveling the more sort of remote parts of Australia, Central Australia and some parts of WA or a lot of WA and places like that.
Tassie. All right, so what came next?
So about 6 months into our trip, we were up in Darwin actually, and it was time to upgrade our internet connection because, like we said, we started running the YouTube channel by that point, and we realised pretty quickly the internet connection from our Wi-Fi hotspotting probably wasn't going to cut it. At that point, Harrison wasn't doing school, so it was really just a business solution and a YouTube channel solution. So we went with this thing. This is the Telstra Netgear Nighthawk. I think it's the M5. I'm almost 100% sure this one's the M5 model. It's a little 4G, 5G modem. So it connects to the same Telstra network as our phones did. But what we found with this little unit is its signal that it can get is generally a little bit better than our phones. Marginally better, but a little bit better. Other advantages to it is it's runs off your 12 volt. So it just needs USB-C charge. It has an inbuilt battery, so it's portable as well. If you do want to take it away from your caravan, camper trailer setup, whatever it is that you're running it in, and it'll last about a day on the battery. It's relatively small, as you can see, fairly compact, size of my hand. It's pretty light and it's very, very durable. This one, I don't know if you can see, but it's been pretty well knocked around and it's held up really, really well. It's been flawless, always works, always turns on. It's just a really simple, easy use.
Yeah.
But it's still relying on that 4G, 5G network. So I did a lot of research before we got this to figure out what was going to be the best solution for us. And this at the time, obviously pre-Starlink, which we're going to get to in a minute, pre-Starlink, this was about as good as you could get as far as getting decent internet in as many places as possible around the country. And the way you could do that was by plugging in an external antenna. And that's why this thing crushes it versus your phone. Even though it's still connecting to a 4G network or a 5G network, being able to plug in an external antenna into this changes the game. Another big advantage of this is you can run, I think it's up to 10 devices or something from it. It uses very little power, a similar amount to having your phone on charge all the time. It's very similar to that. So we leave this on 24/7. So the big advantage is we have a Wi-Fi network in our van. Whenever we've got 4G or 5G service, there's always a network available. The network actually reaches to the vehicle as well. So what that meant we were able to do is, because we had data on this device, we didn't need as much data on our phone plans.
Yeah.
So we downgraded our phone plans, and when we got this, and even when we're driving in the car, as I said, we can reach this Wi-Fi network and connect to it. So we found we were using our phone's data plans a lot less. One of the big cons to this is that it obviously you need a second phone plan. This has its own SIM card built in, so you need a second plan for it. We just went with the Telstra business plan because that's what suited our needs, but do your own research and figure it out what's going to work for you. You can put a Boost SIM card in these as well. I have tested it. A Boost SIM card will work in these as well. So if you bought this outright, you could put a Boost SIM in it and it will still connect to the Telstra network, which we find Boost is really good for big data plans. You can buy 12 months and a big pack of data, and it just, set and forget, so to speak.
Do you remember how much this roughly set you back?
I think they're about $500, around that mark.
Yeah.
It could within $100 of that anyway. We put it on a plan, a 2-year plan, so it's coming up to being coming off that contract in a couple of months. And we're probably going to keep it, and I'll touch more, even though we've got Starlink now, I'm going to talk more about that when we get Starlink as to why we're going to probably hold on to this little device. And one of the big reasons for that is that permanent Wi-Fi network, or permanent as long as we've got service.
Let's talk about the difference when you set the antenna up.
Yeah. Ta-da! So this is our RFI panel antenna. I'll leave a link to this in the description below, as well as for the Netgear and all the other gear we're talking about. We're not sponsored by any of these companies. We're not paid by any of them to tell you good things or anything like that. Just thought I'd get that out of the way as well. It's just what we've used and what works. So again, pretty grubby. You can tell we've used this. Now this panel antenna is probably about the size of an A4 sheet of paper. It's really light. It probably only weighs less than a kilo. I don't know. It's super light. So
maybe like
weight isn't a
grams.
consideration. But this has, as you can see, 2 leads coming out of it.
A really long cord.
A really long cord. It's probably a 10, 15 metre cord and has these 2 plugs coming out of it, which you need to get adapters for. These cables don't come with it. You need to buy them separately. Again, I'll leave links in below, and that'll plug it into your Netgear modem. Now, we put this bad boy up on a 6 metre aluminium mast. It's a telescopic mast, so it fits in the tunnel boot. It is a little bit heavy. It probably weighs 4 or 5 kilos. But getting this up high and then pointing it towards the nearest phone tower gets us significantly better internet connection, better internet strength, and more stable connection in most areas. It's not, it doesn't work. How much difference this makes really varies from place to place. Some places it's gone from having virtually no service and can't load a web page to streaming online.
Sometimes it's really good because it gives you enough signal to get to the next phone tower. So if you're in a town, in a caravan park, often at 7 o'clock at night, the service just goes to custard because everyone's jumped on their phone and is all trying to use the internet all at the same time. Often if we're in busy places like that and we put the antenna up, we can get to the next phone tower that's a little bit further away and we have no problem. So,
and that being said, there are times we've put it up and it's made absolutely no difference.
No difference. Yeah.
It's exactly the same because it really depends on what it is that's affecting your signal. Now, this isn't affected much by, because it's a 4G signal, so it's not affected much by trees or buildings unless you're in a really built up area and things like that. But obviously mountains and hills and things like that really will block the signal. So even putting a mast up 6 meters in the air, if it's not going to get you past those obstacles and get you enough clearance over those, it's not going to make a huge difference. But in the majority of areas, we see at the very least a marginal increase in improvement, at best a significant improvement. So we can go from a couple of megs download, 1 or 2 megs download, to a stable 20 or 30 megs download just by putting the antenna up. So it's really been that setup allowed us to camp in a lot of places for a lot longer than we would have been able to otherwise, especially now that Harrison's doing his homeschool and that our business is growing and we're needing internet more and more. It's a really, really good system. Now, that whole setup, I think, is a little over $1,000 to buy if you bought it all outright to set up. Don't quote me on that. Prices might have changed a little bit when we bought it, and then our internet service for it costs about $80 a month. So it is a bit of a cost upgrade, but it's a fairly cost-effective and really good solution. The only downsides are you've got to set that mast up and you've got to have a way to mount that on your caravan and put the antenna up. That can be a bit of dicking around. And you've got to have some way to get these cables to this device. Now, if this is in your caravan, like ours always was, and these are going to come into the van somehow, we never came up with, or we still haven't come up with, a a good way to get these in other than just poking them through a window, a hatch, a door, whatever it is, or putting this outside. So putting this in the tunnel boot or something like that to save us having to do that.
Which isn't a problem unless there's mozzies, and then you can't
bugs
shut
or anything like that, and it means we can't leave it on overnight. So if anyone out there does have a solution or knows of a way to get this into this through like an external waterproof plug. Get in touch. Let us know, and we'll share it with everyone else because that is by far one of the biggest downsides or drawbacks to this setup.
How hard would you say it is to get the antenna up?
The antenna's a quick and easy job. It's not hard. You put it on, do it up, send it up. It's just the anything that takes time to set up and pack up. It's a 5-minute job, but it's just one extra thing. So that's just it is a small downside, but it is a downside. The only other big downside to this whole thing is you still are relying on a 4G or a 5G tower being nearby or in the vicinity. But we've been able to get exceptional speeds on it in general, and I'm talking often in the 20 to 50 megabytes down and anywhere between 2 and 10 megabytes upload. So it can be really good. If you hit a 5G tower with this thing, the speeds are insane. It'll crush Starlink, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, it can be, it's a very good solution, and it suited us really well for the last 18 months. And like I said, we're probably going to hold on to it and continue to use it because it does have some big pros against Starlink. And I think the two systems together is actually probably the ideal solution. Biggest con being cost. You're paying for two services, but I'll touch on our ideas to solve that in the next section. Starlink.
We were very excited about this, but we were also very skeptical. We just sort of wanted to wait until it had full Australia coverage before we went and purchased it. And
a really good special. So
I don't know if it's bargain hunters.
I don't know if it's still running, but they were running a deal where you got hardware for less than half price. So we paid $450 for the hardware and then got 2 months worth of connection for free, which meant that the hardware cost us about $100. So it got to the point where it was like, okay, now it's at the price point where I might as well give it a go. I wanted to try it for us because I think it's going to change the game, and I'll touch more on that in a minute. But also for you guys out there, I know there's a lot of people out there that are quite curious about Starlink. What are the pros? What are the cons? All of that. Here it is. This is the dish, or dishy as they call it. So this is what gets you your service, and then it runs through a super long lead. It must be a 20-metre lead or something it comes with into this, which is the router that it runs through and deciphers the signal and sends it out to all your devices. So let's talk about, firstly, the pros.
It gives you internet speeds in places there is absolutely no service.
So it'll come as no surprise. That's the biggest pro, is that this doesn't rely on phone towers. Obviously, it's satellite. So it still has limitations with connectivity, but it isn't limited by your physical location as far as your proximity to a phone tower or a city or a town or anything like that. So I kind of look at it in some ways in that where this gradually gets worse as you go more and more remote because towers are fewer and farther between, this gradually gets better and better. Why? Because you're getting further away from people. Because in the same way that when you're running through 4G, you are limited by that tower is the bottleneck, and the more people trying to connect to it it's going to slow down the speeds and restrict it. This is exactly the same. There's only so many satellites up there buzzing around, and the more people that are in your cell, they call it, I think, or your area trying to connect to that network, the slower it's going to be. So it's less effective in cities and big towns and things like that. But obviously, as you go more remote, there's the same number of satellites, but a lot fewer people. So that's where we're really looking forward to testing that out this year as we travel through the outback. I think it's going to be an absolute game changer on that side of things.
Yeah,
but it's not all good news.
Travel slower. So there are some compromises with the Starlink. Firstly, what would you say the biggest compromise is?
Sorry, I just put the dish down. One compromise is it is heavy.
Heavy and bulky.
It's bulky. It's quite heavy. The modem's quite big. It's not, compared to this compact little unit, it is a lot of gear to carry. The big pros, obviously, as we said, is the network and the connectivity everywhere, and the speeds. The speeds are really, really good. You've probably seen some big numbers getting thrown around, people getting 200 megabytes plus. You can, but it's not, that's not the standard. I think average is about 80 to 100 megs. I should say, and that's download, I should say we've only had it for maybe 2 months and only used it a handful of times. We're going to do a lot more testing with it this year and use it a lot more, and we will do an update on this video and update you guys of how it's going. But it's still relatively new to us.
The uploads are not as anywhere near as good as the downloads, though.
Uploads are still a problem. It's same with any network. Uploads will often be a fraction, maybe 10% of what the download speed is. And for us, uploading videos is a big part of what we need internet for, obviously. So the Starlink, while it's good, isn't like this silver bullet solution that just means everything happens instantly and it's all amazing. It still takes some time to upload, and you do need to have it all set up. So the other cons to it are the setup. You do have to get it out, set it up. I'm sure we're going to see, and we're already starting to see, people mounting them permanently or semi-permanently. You can cut the dish and make it a flat mount and all this crazy backyard stuff people are doing. I'm not prepared to do that just yet. I think there'll be better solutions for that as we go forward. The people out there experimenting with it and with the power supply, because the other big downside is it does need a 240 volt power supply. There isn't currently a Starlink 12 volt supply available. Again, there are people coming up with their own ways to make them run from 12 volt. I paid a lot of money for this. I'm not prepared to go cutting it all up just yet. So
not yet, anyway.
Not yet. We'll see. I'm pretty confident that in the not too distant future there will be a Starlink solution for 12 volt. How much power it uses is another downside. It uses about 4 or 5 amps an hour plus whatever residual current that your inverter uses to run. So although it doesn't need much in the way of wattage, if you're running a big inverter like we have, it will use a fair bit of power to keep it running. So having this running 24/7 just isn't really viable. So another option to get around that, the residual, is to run a second small inverter or something like our little Blue Eddy power pack to try and cut down that residual amps or current that you're using to keep it running. But I still think with 5 amps an hour, it's not viable to keep it running 24/7. A couple of other big cons to it are physical obstructions. It's pretty sensitive to things like trees, anything overhanging that blocks its vision of the sky. The wider and the broader clear view of the sky it has, the better it works. Its cloud will affect its signal. Yep. Wet weather will affect its signal. Snow will too. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue in Australia. There is a lot of things that'll affect its signal. And even when it has a wide view of the sky and a really good, clear, unobstructed view, it still does drop out from time to time. Depending on what you're doing with your internet, that might affect you more or less. If you're only downloading something, it'll obviously just pause and continue. It can be an issue if you're connecting for Zoom calls and things like that, though. You can get dropouts that can affect it. Sometimes they're a fraction of a second, sometimes they're a little bit longer. Other big cons to Starlink are the setup and pack up, similar to the antenna that we have to put up with the Nighthawk, but even probably more so, because you've got to get the whole thing out and plug it all in. We haven't really come up with a permanent or semi-permanent installation for it yet, but we will sort of start to look at those options. And it can be pinched. It's it's sitting out on the ground, so we do leave it out overnight. It is waterproof. You don't have to worry about that, but someone can walk away with it. So depending on the campground, we will bring it in of an evening rather than leave it out. Or if we're going away from camp for the day on a day trip or things like that, we do have to be aware that that someone might decide to knock it off. It's getting cheaper and cheaper, the hardware, so hopefully the incentive to knock it off is getting lower and lower, and you would have to cut the cord, but not saying it wouldn't happen and someone wouldn't do it. So that's probably another big con. But I think a lot of the cons to it are going to start to disappear. I think we're going to see it develop. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. You couldn't even get signal in all of Australia. It wasn't that long ago. Everyone was paying almost $1,000 for the hardware. It's now probably half of that. So I think it's going to get cheaper, which is one of the big cons. It's going to get,
as more people take it up too.
Yeah,
it's going to affect your uploads and downloads.
It will as more people take it up. But then they're also still constantly putting satellites into the sky. So hopefully those two things balance out. Then obviously the other big con is the cost. If you want to run the RV version, so it's portable like ours, you pay a slight premium for that. I don't have the exact dollar figure. I think it's around $180 a month to keep the service going, which is obviously a fair whack of money if you're only using this for leisure and entertainment. We were able to justify it, obviously, because we run our business through it, and it's going to change the game for our business. It's going to change the game for how we travel, because we'll be able to get internet in places that were never before possible, which allows us to stay somewhere for a lot longer.
And it's good peace of mind too in the case of an emergency. Like we were talking about this, is that if we're anywhere, if we can get back to where our Starlink is, we can get a message out.
Yeah, just keep in mind it does take about 15 minutes from when you first turn it on and set it all up for it to find a signal, get settled in and actually get Wi-Fi. So it wouldn't be your first choice or your only emergency communication solution, but it's not a bad secondary or third option to back up whatever else you've got. I mean, our primary solution for emergency is our PLB that we carry, but once that's triggered and set off and you've sent that signal out, this would be a great backup to that, to then start getting some two-way communication happening, being able to find out how far away that help is so you can start planning and things like that. And if you do need just medical advice, if you've got a medical incident that maybe not life and death, or you're not sure if it's going to be life and death and you just need some advice, being able to get a call out or being able to message or email could be really handy, and being the difference between heading home or staying out bush.
Yeah, would have been really handy when we were in Keep River National Park too, and we had that flat battery and you had to hike up that mountain to find that
to get roadside.
Inch of service to message your dad to get roadside.
Yeah.
So, yeah, would have been really handy for those sorts of scenarios. So that's why, we've gone with it. We're going to keep it. I think, like Simon said, we are going to just wear the cost of both plans.
Yeah, so my solution to reduce the cost of that, so obviously like I said, not the biggest, one of the downsides to the Starlink is it's not really viable at the moment, at least, to have it running 24/7 and having that permanent Wi-Fi network. So this little bad boy is going to stick with us for a little while longer to be able to provide that solution. What I will do in the next few months when this contract runs out on this device, we'll then own it outright and have no obligation to keep paying for a monthly plan. We're going to get a boost SIM card for it, which is those big data pack plans, like I said, buy a 12-month data pack for it, which means that if there are periods of time where we're really remote and not using it, it doesn't really matter that much. The data will sit and wait for us. And then with the Starlink, we can do the opposite. So if you've got Starlink, the RV version, you can pause and restart that subscription at any time, which is handy if you don't full-time travel like us and only travel periodically. You can use it at home and then pause it or whatever you need to do. Be aware it's not like a pause instantly pauses. It still goes through that billing cycle, so you'll still pay to the end of that month. But being able to turn it on and off will be handy. I mean, even for us, when we're traveling in the more populated areas, for example, if we pull up somewhere for a month, like we're planning to do, say, around Christmas time, at the end of the year, we might pull up somewhere for a month where we're not going to need the Starlink at all. Being able to pause it and save yourself that 170, 80, 180 bucks, whatever it is, super handy. And we'll be able to do a similar thing with this by having those prepaid data plans where when we're not using it, we're not necessarily paying for anything that we're not using. So that's going to probably be our solution going forward once the contract runs out on this Netgear in a couple of months. And then we'll run them both side by side. But then I'm hopeful in the not too distant future that some of the downsides of the Starlink will start to disappear and there'll be more commercially available and viable solutions for all that.
A lot of people have Selfie Go systems and...
Well, they're becoming less and less common. I think it's a dying technology. It's an old technology. The reason we didn't go for it versus something like this, it's a similar setup cost to going with the Netgear and the antenna and everything all together. They're over $1,000 to set up. They were really set up, from all the research I did, I've never had one. So don't get your bee in a bonnet. If you've got one and love it, great, stick with it. I've got nothing against them. But with the research that I did, they're much more set up for improving phone signal, for making phone calls and things like that, rather than improving data speeds and data connectivity. This is a pure data solution, and that's what we needed, was better data. We didn't necessarily need better phone signal. Selfie is much more, in my opinion, for improving that phone signal. So if you travel remotely and you've got your Selfie in your car and you want to have phone signal when you're remote and things like that, I completely understand, and I think Selfie has probably still got a place for that. But I think it's a dying technology. I think it's going to get replaced, obviously, by satellite, but also just the fact that if you've got good internet connection via other solutions, then you've got communications remotely. So it's no longer necessary to it's no longer necessary to have a phone connection, so to speak.
Yeah, and we just use Wi-Fi calling as well.
Yeah, Wi-Fi calling does the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the other tip we've got is to download. So when you are heading remote, I mean, now we've got the Starlink, we might probably do this less, but that being said, we download a lot of Netflix, other streaming services allow you to download shows as well.
Yeah, a lot for the kids, mostly for the kids,
Yeah.
because you do not want to be somewhere without entertainment for your kids. That's just a
Particularly
disaster
on
waiting to happen.
Particularly on the longer drives where we're out of signal and the kids want to watch shows and things, you can download a lot of stuff on Netflix and other, like I said, other
Yeah.
streaming services. Downloading maps as well is a really good idea if you are heading remote and you rely on digital mapping. Make sure that whatever digital mapping you're using, you can download it and then have it to use offline, so you don't need to have that connection. And just look at anything else you are doing, audio books and things like that. Most of them can be downloaded. So have a look at what you are using the internet for, and see if you can download it and use it offline. It's definitely the way to go, rather than having to set something up if you're only doing it for one sort of thing. So
Yeah, and tide charts is a big one too.
yeah,
Those-
tide charts, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. If you're a fisher, or even if you're just like camping on the beach like us and want to keep an eye on things, there's a whole lot of stuff. Just have a think about
Yeah.
anything you might be using the internet for or want the internet for when you get to your destination, and look at what you can pre-download before you get there.
How do we know which way to point the antenna to get the best service? The app's called Oz Phone Towers, AUS Phone Towers.
So Oz Phone Towers will show you where all the phone towers are around you from every carrier. You can filter it to only show you whatever phone carrier you're using, so in our case Telstra, and then you can see where that tower is, and it'll give you a compass heading from wherever you are to that tower. So that's how we know which way to face this, because this only really works if it's pointing at the tower. That's how we work out which way to point it to get the best signal. It'll also tell you the frequency that that signal is giving you, how much bandwidth there is on that signal, and how many different frequencies there are that tower runs. So it gives you a lot of information about the tower that'll help you determine, once you start to use it a bit and learn a bit about it, how good the internet is likely to be from that tower. It's a really, really useful device, and it also has allowed us to choose a campsite based on where the best access to that signal is going to be, because you can see the pattern that signal throws out, where we're likely to get good signal and where we're not. So that's a really handy one, is the Oz Phone Towers app.
So something else we just wanted to touch on is, in our travels, we use the WikiCamps app to find out whether a campsite has service or not. There's a little icon that tells you whether it's got service. And something we've learnt from our travels is that just because a place has service doesn't mean you're going to have good upload and download speeds. They're very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, so the capacity of the tower makes a big difference, and what frequencies it's running on, but signal strength on your phone does not equal good internet speed or good data speed, and vice versa. There's places we've been where we've only had 1 or 2 bars of phone signal but had exceptional upload and download speeds, and there's the same way we've had full signal in places and had barely any internet. That can depend on, like I said, the capacity of the tower, how many people are in that area, how many phones and devices are connected to that tower and trying to go through it. So it can be the bottleneck is the tower itself. But like Liz said, use WikiCamps as a guide as whether there's any signal there at all is a good starting point. But then you can also, on that Oz Phone Towers app, you can put a pin in where your campsite is going to be or where you're planning to camp, and see what the likely signal is going to be. Now, it won't tell you signal strength or download and upload speeds or anything like that, but it'll give you an idea of your proximity to a tower, how far you are from a tower, and how good that tower is, which is another good way to plan a little bit to figure out whether you're going to have internet in a location. But we still get it wrong all the time. There's still places where we think there's going to be no connection and there's a fantastic connection, or where we think the connection's going to be pretty average and it's really, really good, and vice versa. Places we've thought there's going to be a fantastic connection and there's hardly anything or even none sometimes.
Yeah.
And even things like maintenance on towers and things like that can come into play. So you've really got to, have a plan B. Like with anything, you got to be flexible, have a plan B and have some contingency. I just stepped in a massive puddle with my thongs on.
Oh, yeah.
And dropped this in the puddle as well.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, which is why I was sort of standing weirdly and dancing around. I don't even, anyway.
Yeah, so we don't always get it right, but I think this strategy of having the directional antenna, using the Oz Phone Tower app, it definitely enhances our chances of getting good service, especially if we need to Zoom.
Yeah, and we've gotten really used to just having a live Wi-Fi network all the time whenever we've got service. And I think that's a really big pro to this setup, even without the antenna. This is on all the time in our van. It's plugged in permanently to 12 volt. It's on all the time. We've got a Wi-Fi network all the time. And that it's just really, really handy. And we've gotten really used to having that.
If you entered our competition to win a Bluetti EV3A, go check out the Instagram post to see who the lucky winner is. So
and we've got a couple more giveaways coming up as well. So we've got some exciting stuff.
We're giving away something special because it's our birthday soon.
Birthday's next week, or the next few days, in fact, from when this video comes out. So, yeah, birthday giveaway coming up. Make sure you follow us on Instagram to be involved in that one.
All right, guys, I hope that answers all your internet-based questions that we had. If you have any more, the best place to reach out to us is Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, or
leave us
just
a comment below.
Leave us a comment below and we will get back to you.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who's been getting involved in this off-grid series. You guys have been loving it and we've been loving creating this content, and there's going to be heaps more of this coming up on the channel this year. So make sure you're subscribed. It gets you in that competition as well. Good luck to everyone in that. Don't forget to subscribe to the Everything Caravan and Camping newsletter and leave us a comment below to let us know you've done that and what you're thinking of the series. And as I said, all the links to everything we've talked about are down below. We don't get anything out of that. That's just to help you guys out. And yeah, we'll see you guys next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.